everyone. Thanks for showing up. This is the first ever version of this Parents' Night open house, and the first time we've done this. And so we weren't quite sure what type of crowd to expect. I'm glad that you guys are here, and hopefully you'll be able to learn some useful information. So my name is Cameron Macht. I work for the state of Minnesota in the Department of Employment and Economic Development. We are in charge of creating labor market information for the state. So every month when you hear the state's unemployment rate, that's coming from our office. Or if you hear about wage information for different jobs or industry employment statistics, that's all coming from us. So you might be feeling like, oh my gosh, what did I sign up for here? It's 5 o'clock at night, probably tired from a full day of work. This will be your opportunity to catch a quick nap, perhaps. So I'm just going to try and cover some things that might be helpful for you if you have students who are in high school and are getting close to graduating and what they might want to do after they graduate. I'm going to talk about all the things that are on that slide. And then at the end, if we have some time, we'll do some questions and answers. But we've got a small enough group here that if you have questions as I'm going through, please feel free to ask. I'm happy to try and answer them for you. If I don't know it off the top of my head, I'll figure out a way to get back to you. You can either hand me a business card, or I can get in touch with Andrea and she can get that information out to you. So I will do my best to answer things right away, but if that's not possible, we will still get back to you. With that, I'll try and keep it interactive as well. If it's okay, I'm going to ask you guys some questions as we're going through it because that's helpful for me as well. If you can believe it, we actually get to go out and speak to different student groups and talk about labor market information as well. It's not just the parents. In fact, you guys are kind of guinea pigs for us. We very often don't get to speak to parent groups. Students are a much more captive audience, like when they're in school. Someone tells them where to go, and so we can funnel all of the kids into an auditorium just like this and talk to them while they're in class. It's a little harder to get parents rounded up because they aren't always in at the same time. So what I want to talk about first is the importance of career exploration, right? This is a choice that's going to impact the rest of their lives. So it's very important for them to make sure that they pick up something that they really enjoy doing, something that's going to pay them enough to live the kind of lifestyle that they like, and to make sure that they don't get themselves into too much debt and still have some flexibility to change careers or to move up in their careers as they go on. So lucky for them, there is a ton of information available to help them through that process. The first thing that we recommend students doing is taking an assessment. Are you guys familiar with an assessment? So it's just a bunch of different questions that ask them things like, what do they like to do? So it might be, I like to work on puzzles, or I like to use a computer, or I like to be outside, or I like to be working with other people, or on the phone, or things like that, right? But through that assessment, then they can find out what types of things they like to do or what their personality style is best suited for in terms of occupations. And there's a variety of free online assessments, and it sounds like the careers class here at Hutchinson actually has them do these assessments in class, so that's really a benefit for those students. And in 9th grade, a lot of times kids don't get started on this process until they're like in 11th or 12th grade, which is fine too, but then your career selection process gets shrunk down quite a bit. And knowing more about yourself is critical to career planning, right? People choose different jobs at different times and change jobs at different times for different reasons, but at the end of the day, it is up to your student to make those decisions. We can't make those decisions for them. We can try and help provide information that will make that decision easier for them, but they are always the ones who are in charge. So when I'm in a room speaking to a group of students, often I'll start out with this question. I'll tell them, like, hey, you're out of class, but you're still going to get a quiz. And they'll be like, oh, no, I don't want to do a quiz. But I'll ask them, it's a pretty easy question. Like, how many of you know what job you want to have after you graduate from high school? And if this whole place was full, I would guess maybe 40% or 50% would be willing to raise their hand and say, I have an idea of what I want to do. And so I'll ask them, like, well, what do you want to do? Marine biologist or a video game designer or something along those lines, right? So I'm going to do something, and we do this with the students as well, something kind of dangerous. I'm going to ask you guys, if you have your phones with, to pull your phones out and then open up your camera. And then scan that QR code up at the top there, and it should enter you into an online survey. You don't have to put in any identifiable information. You can just skip that first screen if you want. But it should populate your screen with this set of questions here. So What do you think your student is currently interested in doing with their lives? And if you don't know, there's an option for that too at the bottom. If you think they maybe want to be a nurse, you could pick health sciences. If you think they want to be a police officer, you could pick law or public safety. If you want to be a teacher, it might be in education and training. And we ask this exact same question with students, and we get really fascinating answers, right? A lot of times there's a disconnect between what they see themselves doing or what they're interested in doing and what jobs are actually available in the area. So it looks like we're getting some responses here so far. And the students also, a lot of times, like seeing their responses show up on the screen as it's happening. So then I follow up with this question, which is always much, much easier for the students to answer. How many of you want to make money after you graduate from high school? Every student raises their hand for that, right? And then I tell them those two questions are directly linked, right? The job that you choose is going to determine the amount of money that you're able to make over the course of your lifetime. Obviously, there's going to be exceptions in every area. But in general, video game designers get paid a different amount of money than marine biologists get paid, or registered nurses get paid, or cashiers get paid, right? Different jobs pay different amounts of money. And so if you are concerned at all about how much money you're going to make after you graduate from high school, you need to start doing career exploration. If kids don't know what they want to do, sometimes I'll give them some examples, and I'll say, like, most people know who Taylor Swift is, although, like, when I pop that picture up, sometimes they act like they don't know who it is. The guy in the middle is a guy named Mr. Beast. I don't know how familiar, if you've heard of him before, but he's like a YouTube content creator. He makes millions of dollars a year selling videos on YouTube. In fact, he actually has a game show that he created now. And then I always like to pick out a local professional athlete, because sometimes kids have dreams of playing professional athletics. You know, they might be good at baseball or basketball or football or whatever it is. So, you know, we've had lots of different examples: Joe Mauer, Eric Decker. I was just presenting at London Spicer a couple weeks ago. They have Brandon Zylstra. He's in the NFL right now. Lindsay Whalen is from Hutchinson. She was a professional athlete, right? She won 4 WNBA titles and 2 Olympic gold medals, and like basketball has taken her a lot of places. So it is definitely possible for those things to happen. These are all really cool jobs that kids might be interested in. But then I ask them, how many of you have parents who are Grammy-winning singers or YouTube content creators or professional athletes? And usually, like, somebody will raise their hand, kind of be a smart aleck, and I'll say, like, who's your parent? And then they'll say Snoop Dogg or something, right? But for the most part, right, kids don't have parents who do those things. Now, I don't want to discourage anybody from that. If that's what they're passionate about and they think they have a chance to create that, then they're going to have to work hard and they can get that. Like Lindsay Whalen is from Hutchinson, right? It does happen. But then I ask them, well, how many of you guys have parents who are nurses? And usually quite a few hands will go up. Or truck drivers, or accountants, or carpenters, or welders. Like, those are all good jobs as well, and much more available. Those are the jobs that parents are more likely to have. And so students start to think, oh yeah, you know, I've never really thought about what my parents does or what my friends' parents do. And once they have a better idea of, oh yeah, those jobs are actually available in this area or in other parts of the state or other states, they might be more interested in looking into those occupations and thinking about how to get into those areas. So students are always faced with lots and lots of different choices, but there's 2 primary options that they have after they graduate from high school, right? One option is to start making money now, and that means you can just go right into the workforce, and more students are doing that every year, and I'll show you some data about that here in a couple slides. They can also join the military, start earning money right away, and then the other nice thing about the military is a lot of times they'll actually help pay for, if a student decides to go back and get some post-secondary education, the military will help pay for that. The other option is something called an apprenticeship, and most students are not familiar with apprenticeships, but those are a really helpful option as well, because you're getting trained, but you're actually getting paid while you're getting trained. So that happens a lot in some of the trades, so like electricians and plumbers and carpenters and things like that in construction. That's also been expanding into other areas, though, too, like manufacturing. I think Hutchinson even has agreements with local companies to train people and pay them while they're on the job. Or, of course, the more common, the more well-known option is to make money later. and to go straight from high school into post-secondary training, whether that be a 2-year school or a 4-year school or something above and beyond or different than that, right? But those are the two primary options that students could look at after they graduate from high school. So again, if this whole room was full of students and I asked how many of you are planning to go to college, a lot of times I'll get like 90% or 95% of the students in there will raise their hands. And that seems like a really high number. And some of it probably is peer pressure, right? They look around and they see, oh my gosh, all my friends are raising their hands, I better raise my hand too. But it also could be that they aren't sure what they want to do, and the message that they've received over time is like, you graduate from high school, you go on to college. And that can be a great choice for some kids, but it's not for every kid. I also follow up with the students then, and I'll say, well, what college are you planning on attending? And if 90% of the students raise their hand, maybe a third of those actually have an idea of what college they want to go to. But some of them will say, you know, I want to go to St. Cloud State, or I want to go to Minnesota State University Mankato, or I want to go to Harvard, or whatever, right? And so then I'll probe a little bit further, like, why are you picking that school? Like, is it because it has the program, or did you just pick out that school because it looks cool and fun and it's close, or whatever? And you get all kinds of different answers there. But then another really important question that I ask the students is, how much will that cost? And it's surprising how little students know about how much college actually costs. The most frequent answer I get when I say, how much will college cost, is a lot. And you guys were maybe thinking that same answer too, right? College costs a lot. And that's true, college does cost a lot. But a lot can mean different things to different people, right? A lot might mean $20,000 to me or $50,000 to someone else, right? So what do you think is the average annual cost for a resident undergraduate attending full-time at a Minnesota State University such as St. Cloud State or Minnesota State Mankato or Minnesota State Moorhead or Winona State or a place like that? So this would be the cost of tuition fees, room and board, and then other expenses like if they have to get gear for the specific program that they're in. All right, so far it looks like everybody's guessing kind of around the 25,000 level. Somebody's guessing about 30,000. So those are all excellent guesses. And almost all of you got that right. So the answer is actually right about $25,000 per year to go to a Minnesota State University. Again, like St. Cloud State or Southwest Minnesota State, whatever it might be. But the other answers that I had on there were also good guesses because it's drawn right from this table. So this is from the Office of Higher Education. Minnesota has a department that keeps track of all the different schools and what programs they offer and all of that kind of stuff and how much it costs to go there. So this is probably a little bit hard to read, and I apologize for that, but you can see the top one is state colleges, so places like Ridgewater College, which has a campus right here in Hutchinson, but also like Minnesota West or Alexandria Community and Technical College or St. Cloud Community and Technical College. The total cost there, if you're living off campus, is about $20,000 per year. If you live at home during that time frame, it's closer to like $12,000 per year, tuition and fees and all that kind of stuff. For a state university, about $25,000 per year. For the University of Minnesota, whoops, I have that animation there. For the University of Minnesota, which has campuses like in the Twin Cities and Rochester and Duluth and Crookston and Morris, about $30,000 per year. For a private nonprofit college or university like Hamlin or Bethel or McAllister, about $50,000 per year, although we've actually seen some of the private universities start to cut back on their tuition and make it more affordable for people in recent years. And then a private for-profit 2-year college like Rasmussen or something like that is about $30,000 per year. So the cost is a lot, right? But it definitely varies based on where you decide to go, whether a 2-year state school or a 4-year private university. The cost can be wildly different. You can find information about the cost of every college in the state or university in the state of Minnesota by going to the Office of Higher Education. It has a listing of all the colleges and how much tuition and fees and other expenses are and things like that. Very helpful resource for students and parents because the planning for affording college can be very difficult. So one thing that's kind of interesting, again, about 90% of students say they're going to college. In real life, about 70% of Hutchinson graduates are going immediately to college in the fall. And that's actually compared to, that's higher than the statewide average. About 62% statewide go immediately to college in the fall. So Hutchinson actually does a pretty good job of moving students from high school directly to college. That's a good sign. On the right-hand side there, you can see a list of the colleges that students from Hutchinson have been typically going to. So Ridgewater College is number 1. After that, then it's NDSU, University of Minnesota Duluth, Minnesota State Mankato, Alexandria Technical and Community College, University of North Dakota, and so on and all the way down to, you can see like Bethel University. There were 2 students that graduated from Hutchinson last year and went to Bethel University in that following fall. What's interesting is this is changing over time. So even if you look back just 6 years, the percentage was 82% of high school graduates were going immediately to college in the fall from Hutchinson. Now it's all the way down to 70%. So that's a pretty substantial drop just over the last 6 years. Now there have been some pretty significant changes during that time frame. One is we have a very tight labor market. There's lots of jobs available, so students are able to go directly to work and find a good paying job. And then also there was COVID, and that certainly changed the equation for college as well. You can see that over time, the percentage of students that are going directly to college has actually been declining. From Hutchinson, about 23% of graduates from last year's class were immediately employed. They went out and found a job and have started working either locally or somewhere else within the state. And of those, the largest number are actually working in trade, transportation, and utilities, which is probably retail trade. So they've started working at a store, a gas station, or something like that. About 25% are working in education and healthcare and social assistance. So that could be like a paraprofessional working at the local high school, or a lot of people are going into healthcare, working at a nursing home or working at a clinic, things like that. Leisure and hospitality, which is like food services or hotels or things like that. Manufacturing, and this really stands out because if you compare this to the rest of the state, a much higher concentration of workers are going directly to manufacturing, and their median hourly wages straight out of high school are almost $21 per hour in manufacturing. That's a pretty decent starting wage if you don't have a defined skill set yet. And then about 9% were working in construction, and construction is also a really high-paying and fast-growing industry in this area. So that's been a really good option for students from this area. What might be kind of surprising for high school students, and I usually share this information with them as well in the presentation, is that they might be surprised to learn that over 60% of the jobs in the region can actually be started with a high school diploma or less. So you can get hired on the job and then have some form of on-the-job training that'll get you started, versus only about a third that actually require an associate degree, a bachelor's degree, or higher in order to get started in that job. Now, it doesn't mean that education isn't a worthwhile investment, because obviously some jobs that have higher education requirements tend to offer higher wages. In this case, like jobs requiring an associate degree, in Minnesota, registered nurses can be hired with an associate degree. So you can see the median hourly wage there is $46. That's what registered nurses in this area are earning at the median. Pretty high wage. But you can also get a bachelor's degree and be an RN, or you can even have a more advanced degree than that and be an RN and earn wages like that. But you can see there are ranges across every different educational level. So there are good jobs at every educational attainment level. And also, getting additional educational attainment does not guarantee that you're going to get a high-paying job. There are several jobs that you can get with higher education that actually pay less than jobs with lower educational requirements. Now, some jobs certainly require a degree, so you can't be a dentist, like you can't just show up and get on-the-job training and be a dentist, right? Nobody would sign up for having their teeth worked on by someone who hasn't had the right type of training. But other jobs don't require that. You can be a cost estimator or a sales representative or a first-line supervisor of retail salespeople or a customer service rep. Those are all decent paying jobs that don't require post-secondary education. In fact, they actually pay more than some of the jobs that actually do require vocational training. Same deal, so like electricians, that's typically a 2-year degree or an apprenticeship or something like that, pay almost $80,000 per year at the median in this region. That's much higher than, let's say, like a veterinary technologist. That's a 2-year degree. They pay about $46,000 per year. So the investment of time and effort and education, it's not always a linear agreement between those two things. Same deal too, like if you want to be a police officer, that's about $80,000 per year. That earns more than a child, family, or school social worker. That's about $65,000 per year. All of these can be good choices, right? You still want to make sure that the student is picking something that they're interested in doing, but they need to know what those jobs end up paying over time before they start making that investment in time and education. So all of this information is available on our website. We have a tool called the Career Pathways tool, and it's laid out in a way that hopefully makes sense to students. We use a hierarchy called Standard Occupational Classification Codes. Believe it or not, that's not super popular with kids. They're much more familiar with career clusters, which is something that the Minnesota Department of Education uses. And so we put all of our data into their framework, which makes it a little bit easier for them to find what type of information they want. So the tool is actually pretty easy. You can see there's icons across the top, and if you were to scroll over those icons, it would tell you what area it is. So it might be architecture and engineering, or manufacturing, or information technology, or health sciences. And then based on that, it would show you a list of the occupations that do just that thing. And then if you click on those occupational titles, you can learn more about that specific job. It'll have like a 1 or 2 sentence description of the job. It'll have a video, usually about 1.5 to 2 minutes long, that shows you what a person in that job typically does. Have a list of work activities, work environment, whether you be inside or outside, wage information for the part of the state that you're interested in looking at. So what I like to talk to the students about is, are you guys all familiar with an anesthesiologist? You know what an anesthesiologist does? Yep. So anesthesiologists are a very high-paying occupation. They make between $250,000 and $400,000 per year, and some probably make way more than that, right? But that is kind of the average area. So I'll ask the kids, like, who wants to be an anesthesiologist? And they hear, like, oh my gosh, $400,000, I'll do that. And I'd say, if I could go back in time, like I like my job now, but if I could go back in time, I would like to be an anesthesiologist, right? Because I can just stand in front of a group of students and put them to sleep. I don't even need medicine. Like, think about how I could use these skills. But anesthesiologists, of course, they are the ones who put people to sleep. They read medical journals. They keep up on skills. They probably go to conferences like in Florida or the Bahamas or Bermuda, like things like that. Like, they get to interact with other physicians working like as a part of a team. Like, that all sounds great, right? Students kind of think, oh yeah, that does sound great. Maybe I want to be an anesthesiologist too. But then I say, well, if you want to be an anesthesiologist, it's going to require 4 years of a bachelor's degree. Then you're going to have to compete to get into medical school, 4 years of medical school, and then you're going to have to work as an intern for your first 4 years. So that's 12 years of preparation before you're actually practicing as an anesthesiologist and making $250,000 to $400,000 per year. And when these kids are 18 years old and I say it's going to be 12 years, I'll say, like, so that means you'll be 30 before you're actually doing this. How many people think 30 feels old? When I was 18, I thought, oh my God, it feels really old. Of course, now I have a different perspective on that. But at the time, I would have felt like that was old. Entry into medical school is extremely competitive. So if you don't have a really high GPA, you aren't going to get into this career, right? It is a very selective career. Doesn't mean you shouldn't go after it, but you're going to have to realize you're going to have to work very hard to get to that level. Anesthesiologists have to work any shift, right? They have to work holidays. They have to work, and especially in rural areas, if that's something that a student is interested in, you might be on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You don't know when you're going to get called in. You might be sitting down to Thanksgiving dinner and find out if somebody's having a baby, I got to go in. Sorry, come back and have the turkey and mashed potatoes and stuff later. I also talk about how, like, in my job, if I give somebody bad career advice, I mean, I'm not trying to, but it's possible that I would give bad career advice. You know, they'll just be mad at me and then change their mind and do whatever it is that they're passionate about. It's not the end of the world. If you're an anesthesiologist and you do something wrong, I mean, that error could potentially be fatal. That's a lot higher level of stress than what I'm used to, right? I'm doing my best to try and help share information with people, but the advice isn't life or death. Um, so, you know, that's just a much more difficult job. Anesthesiologists then also would have to have interaction with people that are in very difficult situations, and some people are not equipped for that, right? It can be really tough to tell a family, I'm sorry your family member didn't make it through the surgery or whatever. So then I ask, well, how many of you want to be anesthesiologists now? And usually the number of hands that go up is much lower. Now I say, you know, I can put people to sleep, but I'm not actually an anesthesiologist. Where did I learn all that information? Just went and got it online, right? Students can do the exact same thing. They can go to our website and find information about these different careers. So if you have a student, where would you say they are in their career exploration process? Have they started looking at jobs, and if so, are they just researching the ones that they think they might be interested in? Are they actively seeking out information about various careers, not just focused in on one yet? Do they feel a little bit overwhelmed? Or have they not even started looking yet? So if you have a student, give me a little insight into where they're at. This is very helpful. We ask the students these exact same questions, so it's going to be fun to compare the answers between the two. All right, so here's what we tell students. Like, this is the important part of career exploration, is that it is serious business, right? There are choices that you're making right now, like what classes you're taking, how well you're doing in those classes, what you do with your free time, that are going to have an impact on the rest of your life, right? Some of the choices that you're making now, if you get an F in a science-related class, but you want to go into to be a marine biologist, those choices are going to have a negative impact on your visibility moving forward. I always tell the kids, like, you are surrounded by people who want to help you. The people who work at Hutchinson High School, I'm sure that they are dedicated to try and make their students' lives better and to help them be successful long term. So they can reach out and talk to teachers, to counselors in the careers class. You can find out all that information. They have you as parents. They have their friends' parents. Career information is everywhere. But it's up to the students to decide. So, like, if I'm standing up here and I'm talking to a group of students, I can't just say, you're going to be a truck driver, you're going to be a carpenter, you're going to be a cashier, right? I don't know who these students are. It's up to them to decide what they want to do with their lives. So I encourage them, start asking people about their jobs. Like, what do you like about your job? What don't you like about your job? If you could do it all over, what would you do differently? What kind of education or training did you need to have to get into that job? Or did you have to do networking? Or, you know, and some of the information will be helpful and some of it maybe won't be helpful, but it's really up to the students to go out and find that information, get as much information as they possibly can. Find out what occupations are in demand. I mean, it would be awesome to be a YouTube content creator, but those jobs are probably really hard to come by, right? So maybe use that as a hobby, and then in the meantime, you're an accountant, and fall back on that until your YouTube channel blows up, right? Or if you want to be a professional athlete, that's awesome too, but take advantage then of the opportunity to get post-secondary education. Maybe it gets paid for through like a scholarship or something along those lines. Find out if you even need to go to college to get the job that you're interested in. Like, sometimes that isn't necessarily the pathway into that successful career. And then long term too, so the other question that we like to ask, and usually the way I phrase it when I have a room full of students is, how many of you guys want to get out of here? And every hand will go up because they're sick of listening to me talk. And I don't blame them, right? I wouldn't want to listen to my own voice either. But I'll say, like, how many of you know where you want to live after you graduate from high school? And some kids cannot wait to get out of here. And I don't blame them, right? If all you've ever known is just your one community, I think it's important to go out and see the world and see what other places have to offer. But then I'll ask them, like, how many of you like your parents? Or how many of you like the slower pace of living? And then a lot of hands will go up, which is nice as a parent to hear from students, right, that they like their parents and they want to be close to their family long term. And so then I say, well, your priorities are going to change over time. Things that you think are important at 16 or 18 or 25 might be different by the time you're 30 or 40. And so as you think about what your life is going to be like, you need to think about where can I see myself living long term? And if they decide, hey, you know what, I kind of like the Hutchinson area, right? There's a lot of nice things about here. I get to be close to family. The school is the right size for me. It feels a little bit safer. I'm comfortable in this area. Then we would love to have those kids come back, and we try and share that message with them, because so often the message that they're hearing is, you have to get out of here. That's the only way to be successful, is to go somewhere else. We don't believe that at all. We want them to come back here if they're interested in it. So this is probably the last question that I have. Oh, I've been doing pretty good on time. So we'll ask, like, where do you want to live? And sometimes students will say, like, I want to go to Paris, or I want to go to California, or I want to go to Hawaii. And on a day like today, like, I want to go to Arizona because it's so windy and cold outside. And I know Saturday we're going to get more snow, and I don't really love that. But long term, I am one of those success stories, right? I grew up in a small town called Raymond, which is right by Wilmer. I went to college in Duluth, moved to the Twin Cities and got a job, and then as my wife and I were getting ready to start a family, we decided, we're kind of interested in moving back toward home. And so we ended up moving back toward Wilmer, got a job that we like and have been successful at, and haven't regretted it for a second. So what's interesting about this, so you guys are guessing about 60% want to live near their hometown. You'd be surprised at how close that is to what students are telling us. About 2/3 say that they'd like to live somewhere by their hometown or within the same region. And I think that's probably an eye-opener, because even as adults, we kind of have the feeling that students can't wait to leave and try out different places. And I think that's okay, right? Again, kids should go out and see the world and see what different places have to offer. And maybe this just isn't a good fit, but if they do want to come back, we would love to have them come back. We've got so many jobs for them if they would. So career exploration really comes down to trial and error, right? Some people know exactly what they want to do. Other people have no idea, and both of those are fine. We're trying to help provide information to help them make that choice a little bit clearer for them. So even if they know exactly what they want to do, we can provide them with information like what colleges have the major that they're interested in going into, or how much will they get paid in that occupation, or how does that compare to the cost of living to the region that they think they might want to live in, right? All those are pieces of information that can make that decision easier. Choosing a career, so again, those first two questions that I asked, how many of you know what job you want to have and how many of you want to make money? Those two things are directly linked. And so the choices that students make in choosing a career is going to have an impact over their entire lifetime. So they need to take that they need to make that choice carefully. For those who do decide to go to college or pick out a career that does require college, the choice of major matters greatly, right? Different jobs pay different amounts of money. So if you go to school to learn how to be a cosmetologist, you're going to earn a different amount of money than someone who goes to college to be a registered nurse or to be an industrial engineer. All those jobs pay different amounts of money. Choosing what type of job you want to work affects much more than just the. So we also try and pass along the idea that it's not just about money. Money obviously matters, right? Everybody wants to make money in the jobs they choose. But you also have to pick up something that you're good at, that you're passionate about, and that it's easy to wake up and be excited to go to do. So one of the things I like to say, probably doesn't make much sense to 16-year-olds, but makes a lot of sense to people who are in a career, is if you find a job that you love, you don't really have to work a day in your life. It's easy to wake up and to be excited, and you feel like you're in the right place. So passing that, if the kids are able to listen for that long, hopefully they get that information out of it. With that, are there any questions that I can answer for anybody? Yes. So what I found, so I have 3 kids of my own. 2 of them are already in college. One of them is still in junior high, almost high school now. What I found to be really helpful for them, and so the advice that I would give to other parents who are in a similar situation, is to go through a list of occupations with them and start eliminating the ones they aren't interested in. It's a much easier way to get at what they might be interested in. Sounds crazy, it sounds backwards, but in my experience, that's what's worked better. So, you just start going down the list and you say like actuary, and they say, nope, I don't want to do that. Actor, nope, don't want to do that. Accountant, nope, don't want to do that. And you get to, let's say barber, and all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, barber, I might be interested in that. Say, okay, check that one off and put it on the list, and then you start digging into more, finding out, all right, what does it take to become a barber? How much does a barber earn? Where would a barber work? What kinds of tasks or things would they be doing on a regular basis? And there's going to be some jobs in that listing that they've never heard of before. They don't know what those things are. And so then you can use some of these career tools to say like, well, this is what an industrial engineer actually does, or a civil engineer actually does. And so after they start learning more information about the actual career, they can say, yep, that makes sense for me, or no, it doesn't make sense for me. And the more that you eliminate, the better off you are. So that's what's worked well for me. The assessments also obviously work really well, I think, because it gives students, sometimes students won't give themselves enough credit. They won't realize the things that they're good at and the things that they're passionate about. Even if you tell them, hey, you're really good at helping out around the house. You're really good at putting things together. You're really good at driving. Whatever it is that you might notice about your students. They might not feel the same way, but filling out an assessment is not really something that you can cheat on. There's no wrong answers. It's just you get to answer, I like doing this or I don't like doing this, right? So the benefit is, as long as they take it seriously, at the end they'll have a better idea of what their personality style is and how that lines up with jobs. Any other questions? All right. Well, I hope that this was helpful. I know that this is their first time through, so they'll probably give me some feedback too on things that I can improve with in the presentation. You can certainly share that with Andrea or Miles afterward too. If there was something you thought you were going to learn that I didn't talk about, please share that with them, and I'd be happy to incorporate that in to do this again in the future. Otherwise, again, it's just important to be there for your student, right? It is up to them to start making some of these choices, and the more that you can help them along in that process, and help them reach out, help them get job shadows, help them talk to other people about careers, the better off everyone involved will be. Oh, look at you guys are, oh, that's awesome. So I did have a couple extra slides because I didn't know exactly how long it was going to last. So the answer is actually 145,000 jobs. Minnesota's doing really pretty well overall. I guess if you're interested, I can keep going. So we do 10-year employment projections through the office that I work for in cooperation with the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we say that based on everything we've seen so far, here's what we think is going to happen in the next 10 years. Now, obviously, these are really difficult to do because you can't predict things like recessions or technology changes or global pandemics, right? We were completely wrong about what happened in 2020. We just didn't see that coming. But in general, we're usually very good about getting the direction of change correct. Again, some of these little things might pop up that change the actual result. But we think there's going to be about 145,000 net new jobs created in the state over the next 10 years, which is a 4.6% growth rate. This data is available for the state as a whole, but also for the different regions in the state. So if you wanted to know how central Minnesota was doing in comparison to the state, you could do that. Central Minnesota is growing faster. in the state overall. Twin Cities also growing a little bit faster than the state overall. Southwest, Northeast, they're growing a little bit slower, but still expect to see growth. And so then within that, you can also use this for career planning. And this might make a lot of sense because obviously if a student is going to decide to go to college, they probably want to make sure that the job that they're training for is going to be available 4 years from when they start, right? They want to make sure that they're picking out something that's expected to see growth in the future. And so you can see in the state of Minnesota, professional, technical, and scientific services, which would include architecture and engineering and marketing and accounting and legal services, things like that, expected to grow more than 10%. Arts, entertainment, recreation also expected to grow more than 10%, but a lot of that is just catching up from job loss during the pandemic, not necessarily new jobs that are being created. Healthcare is also expected to be extremely fast growing, and it's like over a third of the jobs expected to be added in the state are going to be in healthcare and social assistance. There's just a huge opportunity in that area. Other things that are expected to grow: manufacturing, accommodation, food services, and construction, all projected to add more than 10,000 jobs. Retail trade is kind of going the opposite direction. More people are buying stuff online, and so you don't need to have a physical presence as long as you can ship it to someone's door. And so retail trade is declining, transportation and warehousing is increasing, and so we're seeing some shifts there. If you look more specifically, I have some details there, but probably not super helpful. If you look at the occupational level, computer and mathematical occupations are expected to grow the fastest in the state, more than 15% over the next 10 years, but also expected to be just huge amounts of growth in healthcare support. So that would be like nursing assistants, home health aides, personal care aides, massage therapists, medical assistants, things like that. There's also expected to be growth in management occupations, transportation and material moving, healthcare practitioners, which would be like RNs, LPNs, physician assistants, nurse practitioners, doctors, dentists, things like that. All expected to add more than 15,000 jobs over the next 10 years. Other occupations, then, if you look specifically at what we would call the 6-digit SOC code level, so very detailed occupations, the fastest growing occupation in the state is actually expected to be wind turbine service technicians, expected to grow more than 50% over the next 10 years. Now, that being said, that's still a relatively small occupation in the state, so even though it's seeing really fast growth, we don't want every student to become a wind turbine service technician. We'd have too many, right? But the percentage growth is really high. Nurse practitioners, physician assistants, both expected to see fast growth. Data scientists, statisticians, and then information security analysts also extremely fast growth. Now, even if a job isn't projected to see growth, there's still going to be openings for people who currently hold that job who retire out of the labor force. So baby boomers are in retirement age now, and a lot of them are dropping out of the labor force. And when they do, that creates an opening for those jobs. And so even if there isn't fast growth, there might still be a lot of openings in those areas. The last thing that I was going to talk about, kind of related to those last couple slides, is artificial intelligence. I don't know how familiar you guys are with artificial intelligence, and it probably depends on the job that you have. But so AI is changing the way the world works, and you probably feel it a lot if you work at the school. AI is probably like a very double-edged sword. In some ways it's good, and we need to teach kids how to use AI because they're going to use AI in their jobs. But at the same time, we don't want AI to be doing all of their thinking for them, so that's a challenging area, I'm sure. Most people are familiar with ChatGPT, but there's a ton of different AI programs available, and so like Perplexity and Claude and Julius and Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, all of those are extremely helpful AI tools. So actually the last question that I have for you guys is if any of you have a job that is impacted by AI and how often you actually use AI in your job. So I did the same quiz to a group of vocational rehabilitation counselors about 2 weeks ago. And AI is relatively new. ChatGPT only came out in 2020, I think it was 2022 or 2023. No, it was 2022. November of 2022 is when ChatGPT was released to the public. And now, like, that feels like forever ago. Like, ChatGPT seems like it's been around forever. So I asked this question. We were blown away at the percentage of people that were using it every day or every week. So I feel like students definitely are going to need to know how to use AI if they want to be successful in the future. And it's an important distinction because, like, AI isn't necessarily going to replace jobs. We don't look at it that way. We think that it's probably going to be more of an enhancement to existing jobs. And so then if you want to be competitive in that case, a person who understands how to use AI is going to be more valuable than a person who doesn't understand how to use AI. And so understanding AI is going to be very important. But AI won't necessarily replace jobs. And the way that we think about that is, you can teach a machine to wash clothes, but it's much more difficult to teach a machine how to do the laundry, right? Because they need to know how to sort the clothes, and they need to be able to take those clothes and put them into the washer, and then once it's done in the washer, take them out and put them into the dryer, and then fold them and then hang them into the closets correctly, right? So there's a big gap between doing tasks and being able to accomplish a project. AI will certainly keep improving, and so the more we know about that, the better. With that, I think that's back to my summary slide again. All right. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this has been helpful. It sounds like there's brownies and scotcheroos right outside the door. You guys can have double because you sat through this. I appreciate it. Yeah. If you have any additional questions, just let me know. Thank you.